the Regional Landfill Committee. And this year is going to be exciting for our committee, as was last year, particularly the last meeting. And every meeting from now on is going to be exciting as we move forward the business of the landfill unit. I'll start with the karakia. Tuia ki ranga, tuia ki roto, tuia ki rahoto, tuia te waho, tuia te hei tanaka, ka ranga te po, ka ranga te ao, humie, huie, pa ikie. Now we have, we'll just go through the agenda just quickly because we have no apologies. I know that our mayor is ex officio, but he is in the building, but I also know that he's got a commitment mid-morning to late morning in Stoke. So he may or may not be here. And the order of business for today, is everyone happy with the order of business that's before you? Right, we'll accept that too. Are there any interests to declare? There aren't? Okay. And now, excitingly, we've got the public forum, and we've got two people presenting today. And the first that I'll introduce is Rhys Moon. Would you like to come forward to the table, please, Rhys? Welcome. When you're sitting there, Rhys, bring your mic forward and talk slowly into it, because there's people at home just waiting, chafing at the bit to hear what you've got to say, as we are. We're excited to hear what you've got to say. So thank you for coming and putting the effort into this presentation. And we do look forward to it, don't we? Yep.
It's a pleasure. Yes, Rhys, just put your mic on, please.
Oh, yes. Red, yes, and you didn't pull it, and Rhys, you didn't pull it forward as I asked.
Right, close. And there we go.
And when you want to stop speaking, turn it off again, press the button again on the right-hand side there.
Perfect.
Okay, 10 minutes.
Yeah, g'day. So my name's Rhys Moon. I'm here representing the Fulton Hogan Mega Projects Energy Division and also a wee bit of the regional division. Yeah, so the reason why I'm here is to express interest within the biogas output of York Landfill for asphalt generation within the Nelson region, and also the future rollout within New Zealand of that. Yeah, so I put together a eight slide pack. It's pretty simple. I won't dwell too long, and I'll go into questions afterwards if you need any further explanation to it. Yeah, so roll on to slide 2, please. Perfect. Yeah, so the background to the asphalt production is within Nelson we have a fairly basic plant, but it's an industry standard. So the background operation to this is it just burns either a liquid or gas fuel to heat up rocks to mix with bitumen, and that's in essence how you put together asphalt that paves the majority of the roads around Nelson region. Yeah, it has some limitations. So the primary limitation is there's no effective or efficient way to transfer to a less emitting energy source from burning fossil fuels or some sort of combustible material. And that's just the limitations of the nature of the technology. You can't electrify it or anything like that with any significant ease. Currently, the position of the landfill. The position of the asphalt plant is it's running on waste oil that's collected from the local community and used in the burner. It's a great initiative within the FH, but what it does have in terms of limitations is it does have a larger emittent of waste emissions than like a gas or a diesel fuel, because just in essence it doesn't get burned as efficiently as those other types. Yeah, which brings us to York Landfill. So, as everybody's aware, it does have a biogas recapture system there, and yeah, it's currently sitting with a large proportion of that usage going to the Nelson Hospital. What it does also have is it has a reasonable amount of surplus gas, which is I'm sort of estimating just from some background numbers at about 50%. and that is made up of the methane, the carbon dioxide, the water, and other contaminants. And that is currently just going to atmospheric flaring, with some future opportunities that I'm somewhat aware of. So our proposal is to take a portion of that additional biogas, treat it and bottle it, and actually use it to fuel our asphalt plant, and thus actually pushing us away from using the waste oil. A bit more background to our asphalt plant. We currently have about 2 to 3 years of consent life remaining in it. So we're in the process of either extending that consenting life of that asset, or applying for a new asset consent. My sort of preference is that we go for a new consenting asset, either that be with the biogas or with a diesel derivative, just because it will help improve the airshed around the airport region. Preferably biogas, because it is a good recovered renewable resource for us, and gives us a good amount of decarbonisation within that asset, rather than going towards a sort of imported diesel sort of fuel burning system. Yeah. So principally, what we're proposing is to sort of do a bit of a partnership in terms of the treatment and the bottling side of things, and we have that as the separating part. Yeah, benefits for the council. It still maintains the good solid surplus supply for the hospital. Creates another revenue stream for the landfill. Creates a partnership with FH, or a further partnership with FH. And reduces energy wastage, reduces emissions into the airshed for the airport region, and also has a sort of a shared risk model. So it's not just taking on the risk of building assets, and it's not just us taking on the risk of fully funding those assets. Yeah, partnership. Other key points to that, there'll be, most definitely, there'll be the royalty side of things. There'll be the additional funding that goes into the council and into the business unit. There'll be reduction in carbon emissions costs. There'll be the publicity aspect as well. Doing this kind of stuff is really good for really good for both FH and the council, in terms of getting the word out there, and also creating a sort of a first within New Zealand. Yeah, and the environmental tickers there as well. A few future steps into the process. So first thing we're going to have to do is actually do the proof of concept. So putting up a demonstration project. Then that will help us actually dictate whether or not we actually have the technical feasibility and the financial feasibility of it. The funding models and supply agreements, how we actually do this. We've already indicated that we're not as much keen on indexing the cost of the fuel. We want to actually do like a collaborative funding model for supply model for this. Yeah, then new asphalt plant, we're thinking about 2 to 3 years for the actual rollout of that, or at least the consent side of things. Then probably another year after that for the construction. And pretty much what my ambitions are within the Fulton Hogan energy sector is to actually do a further rollout within New Zealand for this technology, because what every major city has in New Zealand is either a biodigester within wastewater, or a landfill that has some sort of methane recapture system. Yeah, and as it shows there, the main centres that we have asphalt plants around New Zealand, and quarries around New Zealand, and there's a huge amount of scope to push this out. Yeah, and open for questions.
Thank you, Reece. That was a very good presentation, and the overhead as well. That's excellent. So I'll take questions now. How long have you been going? How long has it been going? 7 minutes. Well, we can have some questions. Right. Councillor McNamara, do you like to go first?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question. So if we go into a partnership around the construction side of it, I'm just wondering if that will give us scope to use the rest of the gas that you're not taking.
Most definitely, and that's the purpose of going for a partnership, rather than us fully investing in a tailor-made infrastructure that only feeds our purposes. scope to actually push out into other users around the community, especially heavy plant and heavy industry that does wood and paper sort of production.
Councillor Walker, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Reece, for your presentation. Very exciting. I guess my question is, do you have the capacity, if we was to free up Nathan to come and work beside you straight away, do you have the capacity to actually get this underway, or is there a time frame? Do you have to live out your consent? So what would be the next steps if we actually had a appetite to bite into this and move together?
Yeah, so I've got capacity, not a huge amount, but enough to actually progress this from the FH side of things. I'm currently doing the business case for the asphalt plant. So in terms of next steps, I think the demonstration project, which I believe there already is a pilot processing plant looking at getting established up the York landfill. What we'll look to do is tag onto that and help out with the rollout, whether that be funding or was indications of demand.
No other questions? I'll have a couple of questions if you don't mind, Reece, before you go. You talked about bottle gas. So you're going to bottle it at your end?
Yeah, so the idea of bottling comes from just the geographic position of the landfill compared to our asphalt plant. We are limited by putting an asphalt plant up at the actual site and having a piped gas system just because the traffic movements around that area. So the idea would be that would help fund, or if not, pay for the actual bottling infrastructure to be able to transport it in between both plants, if that answers your question.
Yes, I think it does. And what sort of, is it too early to ask you what sort of volume we're talking about here?
Oh yeah, that's a hard question.
Okay, I won't put you on the spot on that.
I've got the numbers. It's just what numbers make sense. So we're looking at up to about 8,000 gigajoules per year, which is about one container worth of biogas per week. So one traffic movement per week.
Can I have that again, that figure?
About 8,000 gigajoules.
Good. Now, very impressed with your presentation. As chair of this regional landfill committee, I would like to suggest that you now leave here, but liaise with our general manager for the landfill, the regional landfill business unit, and collaborate with him and his staff and come forward as soon as possible, I think, back to this committee in confidence, because it'll be a commercial activity, and we'd be pleased to receive it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that was, exactly the intent of my presentation, and glad to be a part of it.
Good. Thank you. We have one other presenter today, which is excellent. And I think it's Amy Shattuck. You're coming to the table now. Just make yourself comfortable. I won't say kick off your shoes, but make yourself comfortable. Amy, you've been here before. You know the drill. Can you bring your mic forward?
Yeah.
And the right button there. Yes, you're into that. And turn it off when you're not speaking.
Thanks.
Now, the governance people have told me you've got 10 minutes.
That's right.
I was prepared to say, Amy, you can talk as long as you like.
Oh, you know me too well to say that.
No, I think I was frowned at actually. So we'll stick to our 10 minutes.
Perfect.
I'd suggest you might ease off about 8 minutes so that we can get a couple of questions. The only questions we like to pursue, particularly in sensitive issues like this, is if our councillors want clarification on a point you've made.
Yeah.
And I'll take perhaps a couple of those, and I'll get our general manager here for the landfill, regional landfill business unit to briefly, with a capital B, briefly respond after you've spoken, Amy.
Certainly.
if that's okay with you, and then we'll take a couple of questions.
Yep, sounds
So
good.
you ready to go?
Perfect, thank you. So
Good.
kia ora, ko e miro haikine whakata ia Shadok Takawaingoa. I'm here today representing Kelly's Conservation Forest, and we have a society for the protection of that. So I thought, excuse me, I'd spend the first sort of 4 minutes, if we go quickly, just for those who aren't aware of what it is, just a wee bit of a brief idea, its location, its purpose, and where we're at. And then I've collected some of the data around our experience and concerns around the landfill not managing waste within its site. And I think that there's, and I'll run through that so you've got a bit of an idea. Certainly been in correspondence with Nathan about this recently, so it won't be a surprise. And then at the end, we've got some outcomes that I would like us to consider as we move forward. And obviously there won't be an answer for that today, but I want to be really clear about our intent of presenting for this. So Kelly's Conservation Forest, significant natural area, Kiwi 2, Department of Conservation covenanted, protected under the Reserves Act. It's got a wetlands. We also have additional biodiversity corridors and halos to the Grampians, Brook Sanctuary and Marsden Valley across the properties at 100 Enniglyn Road and 11 Bills Drive. Those areas contain tributaries to York Stream and to Jenkins Creek. So just for proximity, we have the landfill on the right of the image. At the top is a biodiversity connector, which Council has actually supported our family to develop over the last 4 or 5 years, and the designated conservation area. So we're looking at close proximity. Just a bit of a context, our family has been protecting that conservation area, an original piece of native forest, pre-European, and expanding it since the mid-1980s. So the size of the problem. So we began to have dialogue with Nathan earlier this year, but certainly what isn't indicated in the paperwork is the dialogue that we've been having since about 2022. And so I want to talk about the size of the problem, which I think was misrepresented or underrepresented in the report that came through. So the report indicates that this is a one-off event. It isn't. It's an ongoing problem and increasing environmental risk. And we'll pattern, I'll work through as we go through the slideshow, just to show exactly how this has come about. So this year, we have had waste events on the property and conservation areas on the 29th and 30th of January, 17th of January, 29th of January. That should say the 3rd of February and also the 18th of February. Just had a neighbour contact me with that last date as well. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 events within the last 50 days. And these are not high wind events. It is an ongoing issue. So I was told by Bryden from Edges that the rubbish was ours. It isn't, and we'll have a discussion about that. It was reported that there was this one sack of rubbish and a few other pieces, which is a concerning misrepresentation. I'm going to show you some images and a bit of a pattern as to how this looks. And most alarmingly of all, that there was no reported complaints. And yet we have records of just between 2 or 3 neighbours of dozens of complaints this year alone. So we'll work through some of that. Okay, so when did it start? The problem started for our conservation area and the farm essentially in 2022 when there was a removal of the buffer zone on the landfill. So on the left-hand side is an image which has tree planting and a maintenance track through it, and our boundary is the yellow boundary there. To the top part of that, the tributary to York Stream is our biodiversity connector, and down to the left is the conservation area. To the right, in 2022, Council or the business unit undertook removal of that buffer zone right up to our boundary. Now, I don't have time to go into today the effects of cutting into the toe of a hill in the wettest winter we've ever had, but I think the picture explains itself. So after the trees and the buffer zone were removed, essentially the waste not staying within the site exacerbated, and we began to have a real problem. Now, this also coincides with a change in the covering of rubbish. And so traditionally there had been a cover which required a certain amount of topsoil to be placed on it to mitigate the rubbish flying from anywhere and the smell. But what we see is a change to the canvas covering like this, which not only does not cover it, but also is wont to move and change in the lid thing. So the picture on the left is how it was left for close down over Christmas and New Year's. The picture to the right was a week after we made a complaint about it not being covered properly. And so we have images of this, of how this is being left at public holidays, weekends, and this is, well, I don't have time to go into smell and noise today. The focus is rubbish. There certainly has a flow-on effect for this as well. So I don't know what you were doing on New Year's Day, but my family, I and the conservation friends were on our hands and knees in paddocks picking up tiny bits of polystyrene and large rubbish. And I have promised to pick this up as a diligent Kiwi. But I'll come back to this later on. But we have spent unquantifiable hours working through the rubbish pickup. And so we've identified locations, not individual pieces, but locations to look at the spread. There are some areas that we haven't even entered yet because our primary focus was the protection of animals and their health and wellbeing. So while the report indicates that there was a sack of rubbish and a few pieces located in other paddocks, we have emptied ourselves trailer loads, wheelie bins. We've handed sacks back to the landfill, and we've also watched and spoken with the workers as they take the rubbish off it. So the extent has been large, and I'll show you that. So just as an example, this is what it looks like. We've got kids' Christmas wish lists, concert bands, building wrap, food, confidential documents, the site office from the landfill. Now, I have to admit, I will be really honest, that I was pretty affronted when the operators told us that it was our rubbish and the sanitary pad and soiled toilet paper was likely ours. So I think that's worth mentioning about both the level of integrity, the level of reporting, but also the level of desire to engage on this topic. And in 2026, that's quite concerning. So we'll keep going through. These are just some of the images. You can see them around here. And the problem is, of course, is that in the grass, it gets wedged in and you have to literally peel back the grass to find the extent of the issues. So we'll keep going. This was also, on a private note, through our veggie garden, through our orchards, on our front lawn. Tiny little bits, like the bit to the left. Massive building wrap. This just about chased one of our horses through a fence before we caught it. Okay, so if we flip to the report, so the map that Bryden gave us and is reported on in the report that went to Nathan, he also showed me on that day. So I think it's important for a context of that because it's implied that this is the overall, it's implied that this is the overall catch of the rubbish, but actually this is a map just designed for the coordination of that rubbish pickup on the 29th of January between the hours of 9:52 and 1:03. That is day 31 of the cleanup, and they were still collecting sacks of rubbish. Okay, so we're still cleaning further afield. So, the report says there was a sack of rubbish, one piece in one paddock and 6 in another. That was that time period, pickup of rubbish, 31 days into us picking up rubbish. So as a bit of a test, after we got that report and I was suitably hacked off, I went into a paddock with my husband and we spent 10 minutes collecting, you can see it on the time there, rubbish, and this is what we captured within 10 minutes. And this is post the report being given out. So we are still looking at this rubbish, okay? And that's what we gathered within 10 minutes in the biodiversity corridor. So what I would like is we'd like some recognition that there's an ongoing problem and increasing environmental risk, okay? With the waste not being contained on site, which is the ideal, right? Like if we can contain it on site, brilliant, absolutely. But we're not. And in fact, when I looked back over the text messages that we'd sent alerting the landfill to rubbish collection, there was over 12. And that doesn't include the phone calls. And Downers knew the extent of the problem and they employed a full-time person to collect rubbish off our property, so the previous contractor. So this is not a new issue and it's not unbeknownst, but it is concerning that there is no accurate reporting system for those complaints. So recognition that there's ongoing problem with increasing environmental risk. So these areas that haven't been cleared currently sit in those tributaries. And while the report from the landfill says that there is no environmental concerns, I would argue, A, you're not qualified to determine that, and B, emptying waste from a landfill into an environmental area and tributaries certainly presents an environmental risk and concern. So I'd like a system for accurate reporting on complaints that captures what we are accurately, we and other neighbours. So, this is not just two neighbours, this is actually the surrounding neighbours. like a commitment from the business unit to keep waste contained within their site. And I do applaud Nathan for taking action and starting to implement some of those things. And that the remediation is quick and thorough, and that we don't have to receive abuse when we request it. So it's pretty affronting to be aggressively told, you can't bloody expect us to continue doing this and paying for it. Well, my expectation and our society's expectation is that waste is contained within the site, and when it isn't, that the remediation is quick and thorough and at their cost. Kia ora.
Amy. Thank you very much for your presentation. We need to know this.
I think you do. And
Yes.
Greatly, I mean, as an environmentalist and farmer, you know, this is a huge concern. And when I read that there had been no complaints, alarm bells rang.
I'm now going to ask our General Manager for the Regional Landfill Business Unit not to stand. I'd have preferred him to stand. I don't want to catch him off guard, but I'll lead up to it, talk a few more words, and then he'll realise where I'm going. Stand up, no, sit and apologise to yourself, Amy, to your mother-in-law, Lindy, Kelly, and all of the family for the angst that you have experienced over the February. No, come on, it's January, it's December, all of that period. I'll leave it at that, and I'll ask Nathan now to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of the Landfill Business Unit, I'd like to apologise for the litter incidents that you've had. The Landfill Business Unit has implemented quite a number of activities over the last number of years to try and mitigate litter issues, and we are ongoing with that. Our biggest single action will be our new transfer facility on the site, and we expect that will allow us to discharge waste during windy periods without it being transferred to the tip head. We have put in some changes to the litter fencing, or intending to put them in, so that'll increase the height of it. So yes, we apologise on behalf of the Landfill Business Unit, and I do, for the fact that you are inconvenienced by this.
I'm prepared to take a couple more questions. I would like to ask the first one. Nathan, did I read in your report that's coming later? We can give this some more thought as a committee. Did I read that you didn't close the landfill at the time? And in retrospect, you felt that perhaps you should have, not perhaps, that you should have. Is my memory serving me correctly?
Sorry.
All right. Nathan's going to report to us during the committee.
Yeah, that's right. And I would just make one comment there that this is not happening in high wind events exclusively. It is happening in general. So when we look at those dates and we map it against the wind, sometimes there is some wind, sometimes there's not, but this is a pattern that is not reliant on high wind events. Yeah.
Any other questions or more clarity? You're comfortable? We're going to deal with this we're not comfortable, but we can wait. Love those words, Councillor Walker. So thank you, Mandy, for coming.
Yeah.
And your presentation, very clear and very professionally presented to us.
Kia ora, thank you.
Held on the 16th of December, that's the confirmation of those minutes. Would someone please move that they be received as a true and correct record of that meeting? Righto. Councillor Hodgson has moved. Have we got a seconder?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded by, I'll move that. I'll put it. Those in favour will say aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. Now we'll move on to the order of the day in the agenda. The Nelson Regional Landfill Business Unit General Manager's Report. And this is always very interesting. We're going to spend some time on this because there are so many questions. How do we want to handle this? Because I often feel that Nathan presents and it's a long presentation and you can sometimes miss a point in the first part of what he's saying, and then by the end of it, you've forgotten it again. Is there any way we can break it up for you, Nathan, that you'd be happy to deliver it in certain sections or?
Through the chair, I'm happy to do it however you want. No issues there.
No issues there at all. How do members feel? Do they want Nathan just to go for it, give us his report, and then do questions, or would you like it sort of done in part?
Go for it.
Go for it.
Okay.
Dean? Go for it. Yeah. Right, well, I've lost that about 3-1. I thought it was a fantastic idea to break into parts and dwell on each section.
It was a good idea, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Through the chair, the landfill, the general manager's report is for the 6 months to just the 31st of December. We didn't have a meeting in the September quarter. It's generally good news. Obviously, the one bad news item is the litter event that we had during that Christmas New Year period, which we've just recently heard neighbours' perspective of. In terms of health and safety, there was one notable event, which was a landfill fire or ignition event that was quite large. It was well managed by the contractor. The activities or I guess the preparation that we had in place was good. So our fire truck was used to douse the flame while it was dug out, and it was a much more larger fire than we generally have had. One thing that was interesting was some of the staff indicated that, or the staff member running the fire truck, that maybe there was some more training that they could do on the fire cannon, because it's behind you, so you can't actually see where it's going when you're operating inside the truck. So, I was trying to figure out some sort of training. Maybe we see if they can knock down some poles or something, or some drums or something when they're trying to, just to try and train a little bit better. Despite that, the handling of the fire was very, very well done. So there were, in terms of finance, the landfill is going very well. Whereas last year we were concerned that waste volumes would result in significant deficit. We're actually running at quite a surplus. And that surplus is through significant amounts of contaminated soil being disposed at the Eves Valley landfill, and a slight increase in compared to budget in waste at York Valley. So that's a positive. We've also working on things like our risk management, and we'll talk to some of those risk management items in the workshop later. Things like landfill buffer zones, our regional consenting program. Those are things that are strategic for us, and we need to keep pushing forward and understand how we would build those into our long-term plan. In terms of projects, the landfill business unit is starting construction of the transfer facility. It's actually the profiles and stuff have gone up. Well, we expect that to be completed before the end of this financial year. So that will give us the ability to accept waste at the landfill, discharge it in a covered facility. And that will then hopefully provide us with a way of mitigating against litter issues from discharging waste at the tip head. We'll be able to store it in the transfer facility for some time to wait for lower wind periods, so that we can then transfer it out to the tip head and roll it and compact it in when the wind is not, gusting. This particular event, the litter event, it happened, that was the 140 km/h winds from the southeast, which is a very unusual wind direction for us to receive. Our operator didn't understand or wasn't aware that he was allowed to shut the landfill and to stop receiving waste. And it was during it was on the 29th, 30th of December. I was out at the regional sewage business unit at the time. There was a big power failure in Tasman, so we weren't watching the landfill so much. And as soon as I learned about it, I came in and we shut the landfill. But that was later than we would hope to do. And as a result, there was a lot more litter had been picked up. The southeasterly wind direction was a principal issue. It came over the back of the hill and created whirlwinds in the landfill, and actually picked the litter up and took it over the litter fences and onto neighbouring properties. I responded by going to the landfill. I chose to respond to what I saw were urgent and issues that were going to continue to create harm. So I directed the contractor to fix all the fences that were knocked over by trees knocking down, so the stock couldn't get out. That was we're trying to stop further harm from loss of animals, etc. And we agreed with the neighbour that we would pay for them to pick up litter from their property to allow them to have stock paddocks free. But we chose not to go immediately because it was the 1st of January. We were struggling to get staff at that stage until such times we had staff where we could do it sustainably and safely. So that litter pickup occurred after that. We did have a failing, and the primary failing was probably the fact that our pickup methodology didn't state we had to go on a grid search pattern. So we've now rectified that. Our standard operating procedure requires those staff to do a grid search across neighbouring properties so that people will see every piece. And one of the problems that I think we're finding is that, if the litter does get under something and you're walking past on the opposite side, you won't necessarily see that. And as a result, the litter pickups probably weren't as effective as they could otherwise have been. And so now with the change in procedure, I think we'll be on top of that. That all being said, our primary goal, our primary focus is not having it happen in the first place. And that's, where our emphasis and our energy will be to go, is to try and avoid these issues from occurring. So, that's the issue or the situation with that. So, and it is very unfortunate. We are close to our neighbours. One of the things we have is a limited buffer area on the site, and that's a strategic thing we need to think about. So, right, that's questions, please.
Right, well, thank you for that, Nathan. It was a very wholesome report and honest too. Are there questions for Nathan? James or Councillor Hodgson?
Kia ora, thank you. Just regarding the fire, from the perspective of the landfill, I understand that council does a lot of waste minimisation and education activities. From the landfill perspective, do we do enough to discourage or educate people around disposing of things like batteries and stuff into their general waste?
Yeah, through the chair, the battery program that the councils run is funded by the landfill. It is something that we've put a lot of emphasis on. So we've developed things like the battery disposal bins that have gone in, and we've paid for and funded those, the funding of those. The councils have then purchased them and to put them in their facilities. There's always more we can do. I don't think we'll ever get on to 100% capture of batteries. In this particular case, we can't guarantee it was a battery. The fire was large enough that the amount of litter we would have to sift through was too big to be able to determine the cause. Generally, our fires are caused by two things, principally lithium-ion batteries, secondarily, a certain time of the year, waste or old flares that people have inappropriately disposed. So in this case, we think it was a battery, but we don't know for certain. I don't think we can, I think we've seen a material reduction in batteries and or fires coming to the landfill over the time we've been running the battery or the battery collection and disposal facilities. And I think we've done a great job. There's always more to do, and I don't think we can stop the process. I think it will just continue to be something we have to manage and work on constantly. Lithium-ion batteries are not going away. There's more and more of them every day, so it'll be a problem that we need to keep. Our philosophy has been try to make battery collection and disposal really convenient. and therefore make many more spots for that. So it's easy for people to do it, and therefore they'll do it. If it's hard, they won't, and it'll go into the rubbish bin. So, yeah.
Right, another question? Councillor Walker, would you?
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you for your report, Nathan. Further to what Councillor Hodgson said is, yes, it's good to do education with regards to what our community is doing with their batteries. But I guess for me, would it be business as usual if we were to look at the timeframes of how often they do fire drills and they're given an opportunity when, you know, when we do have a fire that they feel equipped to do something? And I know that's a management thing and we're governance, but just piggybacking off the education thread that we've just heard, I would like to see that we could increase actually doing proper drills. So these people who aren't so familiar with the equipment have an opportunity. Not that I want to set fires, but you know.
No, through the chair, we're not likely to start fires so they can put them out, but we will. We can also do something like, you know, give a cup of coffee to the person in the fire truck who can knock down 3 drums the fastest or something. You know, make it a bit of a competition for the guys to actually, you know, get in there and try it out. We'll figure some way of encouraging that activity to occur, so that that's done, you know, reasonably frequently. It wasn't a problem. We did that. The conversation came that they weren't as familiar, or was, you know, weren't as familiar with the controls, but, you know, it was something that came in our after action or our, you know, debrief after the event. They were able to do it and they did it well, but it took them slightly longer to coordinate than they might have otherwise done if they're practicing all the, you know, frequently. So.
Thank you. I mean, I'd hate them to be au fait because it's a regular daily occurrence, but however, pushing them into a place where they're more comfortable for our equipment surely would be a safer option. With regards to, obviously, our ongoing conversations, and this isn't the first time we've heard about litter not being contained on our site, and I'm not going to go into any further detail on this part of the meeting, but I do want to acknowledge that, you know, thank you for your apology. Thank you for acknowledging that we had a failing methodology and that you've rectified it. So we acknowledge the event. We haven't just brushed it aside, and we will have further dialogue about it. But first of all, yeah, thank you, Nathan, because I know it's not easy to front those conversations because none of us who have sat around this table for a few years now like to own the fact that we might have picked up. So
don't try and bring Matt into it. Sorry, I cut you short. Okay. Dean, would you like to?
Yeah, so firstly, I just endorse Councillor Walker's recommendation, Nathan, thank you. And just one point was raised about the previous contractor having a full-time litterer, picker-upperer, and a new contractor not. I'm just wondering whether that was a deliberate thing or whether it's something we should have considered in the contract or quite what?
Through the chair, that's not correct that the previous contractor had a full-time litter picker-upper, or that wasn't their role. They had a grounds person or a, you know, what they called an odd jobs man. And this current contractor has the same. There's no material change in the level of labour or capacity there. The change might have been that the previous contractor might have needed to do it more frequently. And we, despite what was said, I don't believe that it happens regularly currently. We definitely do not want it to happen. It's a failing when it does, and we obviously have a responsibility to maintain litter within our facility. And we've outlined a number of changes that we'll do, which include some additional mobile litter fences, obviously the transfer facility, changing the boundary litter fencing to a higher. We do have an independent party that comes and analyses the landfill every 2 weeks, has been doing it for about 3 years. He comes and does odour, noise and litter assessments, and those reports don't indicate the same message that we have had. So in that respect, we've principally they were implemented because of odour issues, or the concern about odour issues. And that was more of a concern to me than the litter. Obviously, we had a significant event during the Christmas New Year period, which we apologise for.
I'll take a question from myself now, if that's okay. I read somewhere in your papers that we had a site audit by the Minister for the Environment, Ministry of the for the Environment. When was that? And is that a regular?
Through the chair, I'll pass this over to William to discuss it. It is a reasonably regular thing, but depends on which site. The ministry do a cyclic inspection program. So, William.
Thank you, William.
Through the chair, yeah, back on the 26th of November, MFE audited our Eves Valley site. That's our class 3 contaminated soil facility. The site's really well set up compared to other contaminated soil dump sites. We have a weigh bridge with automatic barrier arms and fobs, so the access is well controlled. There was one criticism that there was a bit of contamination in some of the loads, so bits of plastic and other refuse that shouldn't be in the soil. And generally, the loads aren't that contaminated. It was a bad luck, and I've spoken to that customer about that loads and back on top of it. So,
William, do they do a similar audit of the York Valley landfill?
yeah, they may do.
They may do. Is it not regular?
I believe there was an audit. I've been around 2 years now. There was an audit a couple of years ago, but they do notify us, but we're obviously subject to the waste regulations, so they're making sure that our site's compliant.
Through the chair, the York Valley site, I couldn't tell you the date, but has been audited by MFE a few years ago. And that was when they were focusing on class 1 landfills. So they were going around the country essentially focusing on class 1 landfills at the time, which is York Valley is a class 1 landfill. Eves Valley is a class 3, so they were now focusing on that. They also do it by region. So in this particular case, they were doing the Tasman region rather than the Nelson region. So they wouldn't have been focused on York Valley, focused on Eves Valley. So we would, we're happy for the MFE to come and visit us. We have nothing to hide. We believe our landfill is a very, very good landfill. We've spent a lot of money and time and energy getting it to be very good, whether it be York Valley or Eves Valley. And we're proud of those landfills, even though we do have occasional issues with them.
Nathan, our presenter, Amy Shattuck, mentioned that the removal of the buffer adjacent to their property, and also she mentioned at the same time cutting into the cliff face. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, through the chair, we during I can't remember again timing specifically, but during the early years of my involvement with the landfill business unit, we looked at the risk profile of the landfill and earthquake stability, and we chose to build a significant earth buttress on the front of the landfill to safeguard the landfill from a major earthquake event. And in doing that project, we harvested dirt from the back of the landfill to create that bunt. And that had two benefits for us. One, it created that earth buttress to safeguard the landfill, but B, it also increased our airspace by about 200,000 cubic metres, or around about $40 million worth of airspace. That benching was done at the back of the landfill and tied into the landfill base. We also put in place a number of retaining structures geotechnically designed along the boundary. And those structures, and our geotechnical engineers are comfortable those structures did everything they were meant to do. So that there is less trees on our buffer on our boundary now, and we replaced those trees with a boundary litter fence. So it's quite a significant feature right around the edge of the landfill on that southern side. It's not shown in any of the photos on that Mrs. Shattuck showed. And that boundary fence is intended to capture any litter, which in the past some of those trees would have caught litter, and the difference. It is true we don't have significant buffer zones in the south of the landfill, but those buffer zones are not big by international standards. Even if we had those trees there, they're very small. I mean, essentially those trees were just essentially growing on the edge of the landfill. So it's a strategic issue that we want to discuss. And we have been trying to work with the neighbours to purchase additional land for some years. We've been unable to come to an agreement on that, and it's an ongoing thing we're working to try and resolve. It's not something we can do on our own at the present time.
Thank you for that, Nathan. Listening and reading the report and listening to Amy Shattuck, you've said in the report that you did not close the landfill. Now, and that the contractor didn't know to close the landfill. Was that one of the primary reasons for the excess of litter over?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, if we had shut the landfill and not accepted waste, then obviously it wouldn't have been picked up. When we were tipping it out, the trucks, when they were tipping it out, the contractor indicated the wind was catching it and moving it almost immediately. Well, should the contractor have known? In my time with the landfill business unit, up to this time, we had never shut the landfill before, or not for an emergency of this event. So I've been here 6 years. This contractor's been on board for 18 months, over 18 months now. In that time, they hadn't had an event that would have justified shutting the landfill. I think we need to make the significance of the event clear. I mean, that was the strongest winds that we had seen in 5 years. At the landfill, 140 km/h winds were experienced on our site, weather stations. There were gusts frequently to 90 km/h. So it was a very unusual event. During that same event, obviously, Tasman lost power for numbers of hours. Hence why I was at the regional storage business unit trying to manage the power failure issues. And as a result, it also happened during the middle of a holiday period where most management staff were not available. So it was a very unusual event. Should we have shut it? If we had have shut it quicker, we would have reduced the amount of litter. I don't believe under the circumstance we would have been able to shut it for 2 days without significant adverse effects to the community. So we don't currently have storage in both the transfer stations and or at the landfill for 2 days worth of litter or rubbish. We would have been at a bit of a quandary if we had have chosen to shut it immediately. What we might have been able to do is shut during parts of the day and then open in the evening when the wind was reduced. The new transfer station will allow us to do that. But it is something we are really analysing and now trying to understand how we can be better in the future. And that's for me, that's the key piece. Can we be better? How do we learn from this? And how do we move forward so that we don't have these issues again?
So I'd like to add to that, because the 4 councillors that are here today, we have a governance role. And coming out of this, I see there's a major oversight and a major risk that needs to be managed. That's how we would see it, each and every one of us here representing the community. So it'll have to go into your risk profile.
Yep.
And it will?
It is already in there.
It's already in there.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, in this report, we've talked about buffer zones in particular.
I'm talking about the fact that it's a risk that the landfill wasn't closed.
Oh, I see. Yep.
That's what I'm talking about. Closing of the landfill. I want to know the priority you're going to give to that people are aware of that. It's an action that under high winds, I know they're unusual circumstances, but nevertheless, that's what risk is all about, planning and preparing for that. And here the red flag's gone up and we're left wanting, clearly wanting. And you can say, well, it was one and a da-da-da and so many in the strength of the wind and that type of thing. But we've got to be considerate of everybody, the neighbours and the users. It would be dangerous for them at that time if they were, your people were working at the landfill when that wind was blowing. So there's lots of factors to consider there. And I want to on behalf of the committee, want an assurance from you that it's going to be part of your risk profile going forward. A very important part. Please, can we have that?
Through the chair, we are working on an operating policy or a procedure that will allow the site management at the time to be able to close the landfill when the conditions are appropriate for closing. So, when they are considered to be dangerous or resulting in adverse effects. We are making that procedure available to the site staff at a relatively low level so that if it does happen on a weekend or on a public holiday or somewhere where the management are away, it can still happen. So rather than rely on escalation processes that need intervention from management. So yes, you have that commitment from me.
Thank you for that. Are you looking forward to your interaction with Fulton Hogan?
Yes.
I'd like a little bit more than that, thank you. Even very much would be good. That would be an extra word. No, three words then. No, I really want to know that before you even go out there, Bolt Road, to see them, whether it is feasible. What sort of funding do you think? You see, I heard the presenter say, Reese Moon say, that they would bottle it.
That's correct.
Now that sparked my attention, and it did Trinity Walker's too. She looks after the dollars. So some thoughts on that, please?
Through the chair, the landfill business unit has obviously been working on options for reusing waste the residual gas for some time. We've obviously brought various options to the joint committee at times. We've done signed a contract with the hospital for the next 3 years and are working on the contract for the hospital for the next 10 years after that. But that won't use all of the gas. And so the strategy that we've developed or developing, subject to the committee's approval, is that we would use some of the gas for electricity production and some of the gas for bottling or for biogas sales. I say biogas because it doesn't necessarily need to be cleaned up to biomethane. If it's used locally, you can bottle it at a different, including some of the CO2 contaminants. It's not as efficient from a transport perspective, but it's cheaper from a treatment perspective. We've included that because we know of at least 2 of the customers we were looking at for our biomethane plant who've expressed an ongoing interest post, the previous conversations, and obviously Fulton Hogan have continued that interest and are now presenting to the joint committee to see whether they can continue to get access to some of that gas that we have available. So I'm very keen to do it. It will depend entirely on how the business structure is set up to what it looks like financially, sustainability wise, etc. And those are all the things that we can work through with Fulton Hogan to understand and bring back to the committee.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Did I get the impression from Reese Moon that they were open to, they talked about partnership, collaboration, and these sort of words, but are they, I just don't want us to be a pipe dream. I want it to be more than that. And if we're sending you off to have discussions, how do you foresee the costs? Because we've all got to watch our costs, don't we, as a council? And we can't let them run away. We've got so much to spend the ratepayers' money on. We just can't go off
through the chair
on a whim and try and achieve this if it's not feasible cost-wise for the council.
Through the chair, the landfill business unit has had a strategy of mitigating its emissions, through carbon capture, flaring, etc., to get its emission profile down. All of those projects have largely been done and have saved us significant amounts of money. We always had the philosophy that future projects would only be done if they made us money, and they also created additional opportunities. So the first iteration we looked at was burning fossil fuel for electricity production and using waste heat for hot pools. That was not particularly well regarded at the time. We then regrouped and looked at using waste heat for a biomethane facility, and then that potentially would have interfered with the sale to the hospital. And the reason we looked at these different things were different categories of benefit that we thought we could accrue. The hot pools facility, we could earn money from the sale of electricity and then use waste heat to create a social amenity. We thought that that would be potentially, something that the community would be interested. The alternative, CNG, was a bit changed our focus. We would sell gas to create money, and we would that gas sales would reduce fossil fuel consumption within our region, which would mitigate carbon emissions and obviously an environmental benefit. And so we're always trying to understand how we're creating benefits from the activity, and all of them should be net economic benefits. We should always have a financial return on any of these projects, and we should also try to leverage to get other returns, whether they be environmental, whether they be social. We don't know. That's up to the joint committee to choose what their priorities are in that. So we'll definitely talk to Fulton Hogan. We'll definitely see whether we can create something that not only has a financial benefit to the joint committee, but also has whether it be an emission or a social benefit to our region.
So thank you for that. That's a very fulsome answer. So by a social benefit, you mean the environment, do you?
No, the social benefit would be creating some better living environment for our people, or some.
Well, that is the environment, and I'm happy about that. I think that's the big win-win on this particular one. Old oil, burning old oil, and then going into the environment, as Reece spoke about. I think the big win is for the environment on this one. And a revenue earner too, if that's your mindset, that's great. Really good. But then it does come back to cost, doesn't it? And I'll be most interested, we will all be most interested to see what comes back. Trindy, Councillor Walker, would you like to?
Just further to that, Chair, I guess I'm questioning what Nathan needs from us as a committee to take this to the next stage, because without having to re-share what you've just spoken about with regards to the revenue stream, reduces the energy waste, reduces our emissions. One of my key things that also produces with a partnership a shared risk factor, which to me is much better if we can share that risk and mitigate as much as we can. Not that I'm often known for being the first cab off the rank, but if this was an opportunity that actually became successful and we could roll it out across New Zealand, oh my, look at that on the map for Nelson, Tasman. But I guess my question back through you, Chair, is what does the GM need now to get some traction and actually come back with some substantial information that we've got data to base a decision on things?
That's a very good question. In fact, it's one that I was tempted to ask, but I did have a moment where I was thinking of something else when Reece was presenting. But one of my questions was, and I thought he made this reference actually, were they involved in this sort of thing with other centres? And I just had a feeling that they may be. He told me he travels New Zealand and he's working in this area. Do you know if they do?
So through the chair, I don't know the details, but perhaps I can try answer Councillor's question. I think we've heard from Mr. Moon in terms of their presentation. There's some appetite for us to go and speak to Fulton Hogan. I think what Nathan now needs to do, him and his staff, is that they need to go and sit with Fulton Hogan, and then they need to report back to this committee, because it's not just that in isolation. We have to present life after Health New Zealand and figure out the bigger picture. And I would suspect that if the dominoes can line up, next time we will report back to this committee is to tell the bigger picture and how this fits into that and what the benefits are, but it'll have to come to this. But I think it's one part of the bigger puzzle, and Nathan clearly understands that, and he's really doing some work in the background So I think this is an opportunity and an endorsement for us to go and chat to Fulton Hogan, which we will do. Well, Nathan, not the royal we, Nathan will do that. And then report back to this. But it's only one part of the bigger picture that I think the Landfill Committee needs to understand rather than just do that in isolation.
It's one small step forward. That's what excites us, doesn't it? Right. Any other questions in respect of a General Manager's report? Dean.
Thank you.
Councillor McNamara.
I mean, I think it's disappointing that the previous decision was thrust upon us so rapidly, because obviously this information about de-risking a different alternative option than we were presented last time could have perhaps swayed some of the members to vote differently. So in that terms, I am a little disappointed. I am, however, excited that we have something that's going to help potentially clean up the air in Tahuna and as Councillor Walker mentioned, be a leading example in the country of how we can, as a collective, improve our emissions around landfills. So I think that's exciting. And yeah, I do encourage Nathan to go out there and make it happen best he can. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those points, Councillor McNamara. I would add, though, that Health New Zealand was an existing customer and had been for decades. So, and we had a pipe going straight to the hospital. And so there was some obligation to give some priority to them in our thinking. No. That deal is still in the process, and that deal is still in the process of being worked through, very close to being finalised, but I won't go any further into that. Right, any other matters? Councillor Hodgson, would you like to move that the Joint Regional Landfill Committee's report chair, what are you? What's your title?
General Manager.
General Manager's report be received.
Happy to move.
Right, it's been received by Councillor Hodgson and seconded by Councillor Walker. Those in favour will say aye. The contrary will say no. The ayes have it. Thank you very much for that one. Now, I think we could finish with a character. No, we don't. Well, no. Let's go into we'll go into committee, into confidential. If someone would move that the meeting goes into confidential, I'd accept that. Thank you, Councillor McNamara. As a seconder, please, Councillor Hodgson. Those in favour will say aye. The contrary, no. The ayes have it. We're now moving into committee.
So through the